This event is simply about a petition that we have put together as members of the civil society fraternity operating in Kitgum and Lamour district regarding the issue of Karamojong cat rustling that has caused several havocs in the eastern part of the district, Kitgum district, particularly Orom sub-county, Namukora sub-county, and part of Omia and Nyima sub-county. As you're aware, some of these sub-counties have been further divided into additional sub-counties over the last 1 year, which I cannot mention at the moment, but those are the traditional sub-counties that anybody can quickly relate to if I talk about them in that way. Also, part of Agago district has been affected, and other neighboring districts around Karamojong sub-region in Teso have been affected, and even Lao sub-region. So we have invited you to share with you the petition that we have put together and would like to submit to the office of the Speaker of the Parliament of Uganda, of course in collaboration with the area MP of Chua East, that is Honorable Lamora Margaret Odwa. She is very much part of this process, and she'll be the one to eventually submit the petition to the office of the Speaker. So I'll quickly read through the petition so that we can start from there, and we'll give some other remarks later on. Then we'll entertain your questions. So the petition reads as follows. The reference for this letter is King for EC 02301, dated September 2023. This date, you will excuse us, has been overcome by events because we had to share the petition online, and it takes a bit of time for the online signing to happen. We also have the physical copy here that civil society organizations and friends of these communities have been signing. So this is the petition to Office of the Speaker, the Parliament of Uganda, Plot 1618, Parliament Avenue, PO Box 7178, Kampala, Uganda. Dear Madam, reference: the humble appeal to address the security and humanitarian crisis caused by Karamojong cat rustlers in Acholi sub-region. Kitgum NGO Forum, King4, was founded in 2002 as a voluntary umbrella body of civil society organizations operating in Kitgum and Lamour districts to provide an advocacy platform for the CSOs and promote human rights and good governance. For the purpose of advocacy, the forum has formed itself into 3 sector working groups, what we refer to as CSO coordination mechanism, which includes the social sector, production stroke tiled is trade industry and local economic development, and then we also have the justice, law and order sector working group. We also have others that are subsidiary to these ones. These core 3 sector working groups have outlined. The primary focus of the sector working groups is advocacy for various issues that affect social delivery and the lives of the communities that we serve. In its second quarterly meeting held in Kitgum on 1st of June 2023, is about 3 months ago, a cross-section of members of CSOs, under the sector working group of social sector, identify the ongoing cattle rustling in Acholi sub-region by Karamojong warriors as an urgent advocacy issue. The discussion at the meeting noted that the Karamojong cattle rustling and attacks on civilian population are particularly concentrated in the most eastern parts of Kitgum and Agago districts bordering Karamojong sub-region. These sub-counties include Orom, Chiteng, Akurmo, Okuri, Namukora, Omia Nyima, these are in Kitgum district, Omia Pachwa, Adilang, Paimol in Agago district. These persistent attacks, reported widely in the local and to some extent in national media, have resulted into huge and regrettable losses of life and property. In further deliberations regarding the issue, the member CSOs also resolved to inform your office, that is Office of the Speaker, that hundreds of households in the directly affected sub-counties have been internally displaced to places which they think are safe for them and their livestock, effectively turning these places into IDP camps like we used to have during the 2-decade conflict in the sub-region and in the northern region in general. Some residents of the raid-prone areas, particularly children and women, commute daily to spend nights in the cold in nearby schools, churches, trading centers, and government health facilities, putting them at risks of more attacks by the Karamojong cattle rustlers, since these safe havens are not under guard. The poor sanitation and hygiene, as well as extreme weather conditions, have led to increased incidence of illnesses like malaria and cough. The communities live in a lot of fear and anxiety because of the continued surprise or unexpected attacks by the rustlers. The local leadership report that residents in the affected areas are traumatized and in need of psychological support. Thirdly, the armed Karamojong rustlers do not only raid animals but also sexually harass and abuse women and girls. There have also been some few yet to be verified reports of acts of sodomy of male residents by the warriors in a bid to emasculate them. During the last school term, attendance fell drastically as teachers, pupils, and students stayed away from school due to the fear of Karamojong warrior attacks on the schools or along roads and paths leading into and out of these schools. This will definitely lead to very poor school performance, or in the extreme, increased dropout. To avoid losing all, many households which are unable to migrate away with their livestock to safer places have resorted to selling them off at giveaway prices. This forced transaction is going to cause difficult to reverse impact on the traditional economic and social livelihood of the affected people. Currently, people are not farming or tending to their gardens for fear of being waylaid and or killed by the Karamojong raiders. This will not only lead to famine and outbreak of related diseases, but also to loss of income streams that come from farming as a business. The affected communities, mostly subsistence farming households, are already in dire need of humanitarian support. They lack fundamental, basic needs like food and non-food items. Politically also, there is a feeling spreading among the people in the directly affected sub-counties and in the sub-region of Acholi that the government is deliberately not prioritizing their safety and well-being as it is mandated by the national constitution. To a limited extent, there is also a growing feeling of suspicion among some local communities that some of the raiders are actual agents of some other selfish forces or parties who do not wish the Acholi people and the sub-region well. The emergence of such conspiracy theories does not augur well for the hoped-for national cohesion. I'll quickly give you some statistics that we have sourced from the Daily Monitor of June 8th, 2023. Like I said, this meeting that culminated into the writing of this petition happened on the 1st of June, but all this time up to now, we are in now October, we have been collecting signatures both online at change.org and also physically at our office here, where civil society actors and organizations come and sign. This is a collective voice. It's not just a Think For affair. It is a collective voice, and I'm glad that we have Cow Foundation, Lutwatch should be joining us, WAPU, and other members of the CSOs should be joining us. So quickly, the stats are as follows. These statistics is from the beginning of the recent onslaught that we have seen, where a number of people lost their lives, a number of animals were stolen, a number of property of the community members were vandalized, and people got displaced. So in Agago district, we have had a total of 42 lives lost. In Kitgum district, we have had a total of 27 lives lost. That brings to 69 lives lost over the recent, during the recent onslaughts of the cat rustlers. Then we have even more people injured. In Kitgum, up to 42 people were grievously injured during these raids by the cat rustlers. In Agago, even more than Kitgum, 350 people were injured. In Kitgum, about 60 houses, huts, these are huts, were burnt, and in Agago, about 18 huts were burned, bringing to a total of 78 huts burnt. In Kitgum, about 20 granaries there were burnt, and these granaries could have contained foodstuff for those affected families. A total of 3,575 households were affected in Kitgum, in those sub-counties I mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, the following is statistics of animals rustled so far in the two districts of Kitgum and Agago. In Kitgum, we have compiled a total of 520 cattle rustled. In Agago, 1,851, bringing to a total of 2,371 for the two districts. In Kitgum, 170 sheep were rustled, bringing, for Agago we don't have that statistic. In Kitgum again, 2,500 goats were rustled. In Agago, 3,844 goats were rustled, bringing to a total of 6,344. Like I said earlier, we sourced these statistics from the Daily Monitor of June 8th, 2023.
Local leadership.
Like my colleague put it, also we have been in touch with the local leadership who validated some of these figures that I've read out. The record of losses of lives and property and the magnitude of the human displacement that the raiders have occasioned on the sub-counties from January 2022 to date was also received by the member CSOs at the meeting. The local authorities also note with grave concern that while a few of the rustled animals have been recovered by either security forces or through counter-offensives organized by the local people themselves, more than 90% of the rustled animals have not been recovered and returned. Note, the member CSOs noted that the affected households fall under various clusters, including but not limited to households that have temporarily migrated away to nearby urban centers for safety with added living and other costs. Those whose household property and crops were pillaged, looted. Those whose livestock and poultry were rustled by the raiders and never recovered, or reported to have been recovered but not returned to them. Families whose daily cultivation activities have been disrupted or completely stopped by the insecurity in the farming areas. Economically valuable time lost in moving of animals from kraal to kraal every morning and evening. Food and non-food items sold off cheaply for fear of losing them to the raiders or to the fires they set to houses, the huts and the granaries. Local inhabitants who have fled to other neighboring areas and are now hiring gardens for cultivation or selling their manual labor for survival. These are the categories of the affected households. The children and the very elderly who have fallen sick due to poor sleeping and living conditions at facilities like classrooms, churches, health centers, etc., where they fled for safety. The mentally and psychologically affected displaced people, as well as those who continued to live with insecurity in their homes. Those whose economic activities, like the weekly saving and loan activities of VSLAs, have been disrupted, and the local shopkeepers who have lost business due to implementation of curfews. The local people suffering the burden of spending more resources to meet transport and other expenses during follow-up of raided or rustled livestock. The member CSOs also recognize the valuable contribution efforts various individual groups and institutions have put in to cause action against cross-border cattle rustling by armed Karamojong warriors in the sub-counties of Acholi bordering Karamojong. In particular, the meeting noted with appreciation the following actions already taken to add voice or cause action. His Excellency the President, Yoweri Kaguta Museveni himself, met leaders from across the Acholi sub-region at Barlegi State Lodge in Utuka district in May 2023, where he promised to deal away with the problem in 2 months. He warned the security forces against laxity and urged them to use modern technology in their response strategies. He assured the people of Acholi sub-region of government's commitment to end cattle raids perpetrated by Karamojong cattle rustlers. Several members of parliaments from Acholi sub-region individually or under the aegis of the Acholi parliamentary group have used every opportunity they have had in plenary and other parliamentary platforms, as well as many other official and unofficial platforms, to add their voices to the call for urgent and decisive government response to the persistent raids by Karamojong raiders. The Parliament of the Republic of Uganda dispatched its Committee on Defense and Security, headed by Committee Vice Chairperson Honorable William Museveni, MP, to East Acholi to physically meet the people and leadership of the affected areas, assess the situation and recommend appropriate actions. In March this year, the senior presidential advisor in charge of special operations, General Moizi Kainerugaba, traveled to Kitgum and Agago district to have a first-hand interaction with the grassroots leaders of the affected areas. He too promised rapid and decisive military offensive against the raiders. Consequently, more than 1,000 soldiers of the UPDF were deployed in several hotspots to counter the cattle raids. The respective district security committees of the two worst affected districts, Kitgum and Agago, report that they have continued to hold regular special situational review meetings together with the UPDF and other security organs with a view of bringing to a complete end the cattle raids and associated offenses by the warriors. It's a fairly long brief. You will be patient with me. Just left with a page also to complete. Right Honorable Speaker, with a mixture of wonder, disappointment and creeping frustration, the member CSOs hereby inform your office that despite all these statements of national importance made on the issue by various voices of national institutions and the actual deployment of units of the UPDF on the ground as outlined above, the raids by the Karamojong warriors may have reduced in intensity and frequency, but continue to date. Every single morning, from the raid-prone areas come news of cat rustling, destruction of property, injury to persons, and loss of lives, all occasioned by the invading warriors. The worsening dry spell over the region seems to provide fertile environment for the invaders to operate far and wide. Consequently, aware and aggrieved by the current condition of the affected communities, referring to the various relevant sections of the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, for example, Article 22, Article 110, Article 189, Schedule 4, and 222, which clearly mandate government and its institution the responsibility to maintain law and order and guarantee citizens the right to protection from deprivation of life and property. We hereby, in pursuit of our duty as advocates and on behalf of the people affected by the Karamojong menace, appeal to your office to add your voice and action and cause the House to call for increased deployment of adequate security personnel in and around the raid-prone areas and authorize the disbursement of resources required to facilitate such reinvigorated military operations. Direct the Office of the Prime Minister, working together with disaster management committees in the two worst affected districts and 11 sub-counties, to provide the affected communities adequate emergency humanitarian aid, including but not limited to food and non-food items such as tents, tarpaulins, clean water, soap, cooking oil, posho, beans, and eating utensils. These are food and non-food items. Call on the appropriate units of government to provide the people in the worst affected 11 sub-counties emergency health and education services, depending on the rapid assessment studies they would make to inform their specific interventions. Cause the House to resolve that the affected people who lost persons, that's loved ones, and all property like animals, houses, huts, granaries, and those who sustain related injuries be compensated by government and authorize disbursement of funds to make the compensation possible. Propose to the President and Cabinet that government declares a state of emergency not only in the affected areas in the Acholi sub-region but also in the neighboring areas in the Karamojong districts from which the warriors come and return to with their loads. This state of emergency would enable the security forces to work together with the local leadership on both sides to purge the areas of wrong elements and the weapons in their hands. Specifically urge the local leaders and members of parliament from the Karamojong district that border Choli sub-region to make public and honest calls against the activity of the Karamojong warriors. This appeal builds on the work that Parliament through its members and committees has been doing to find short and long-term solutions to the historical problem of cattle rustling by the Karamojong. We are confident your office has all the powers and will to cause what we are appealing for. We therefore look forward with hope and trust. Thank you. You are sincerely, on behalf of the CSOs, Ottawa Ventorino, Chairperson Executive Committee, Kitgum NGO Forum. Undersigned members of the civil society organizations in Kitgum and Lamour. So far on the physical petition we have 18 signatures. Online we have over 80 signatures of CSOs and other actors that would like to see this change in the situation that the community, the affected community, are experiencing. I thank you very much for listening. I'll give the baton to my friend, my colleague Ventorino, to also say a word, and then we will entertain some questions from you.
Immediately someone hears about our petition, the first reaction would be that, oh, the problem has literally gone, and we want to say here that it is not true. Cattle rustling, as you have heard it being referred to as a historical problem. That means that it has been there, and it is not going to go away if some of the recommendations that we are giving to the House is not paid attention to. Nomadic pastoralism and associated violence that come with it may have reduced in incidence, but the ground which makes it fertile, I mean the ground which makes it possible is still fertile, and that is what why we are calling for some long-term measures to be taken. We have also heard the program coordinator referring to the source of our data. We would want to emphasize that this data that we got was essentially from the local leadership of those sub-counties that we are working with. They are our partners in our civil advocacy efforts, and this makes us call on the different organizations, some of which are under our forum, and also the local government, to continue building the capacities of this local leadership, especially at the lower local government level, to be able to collect data which is valid and useful. Another remark that I want to make is that we have commented on the number of animals rustled and the number of animals that have been recovered. But as local observers, we have received information that the number of animals recovered do not usually tally with the number of animals that have been returned to their owners. And that is a cause of concern, because it leaves us a question that where do the other recovered animals go? So those are things that we need to, some aspects of the war against cattle rustling that we need to iron out. And fifthly, we want to make a comment which is not directly in our petition, that as civil society, both at the local and national level, we would want to see this historical problem of nomadic pastoralism take its appropriate position in the national political agenda. As KingFo, as the local CSO fraternity, we would really wish to hear that in Parliament we have a parliamentary forum against cattle rustling. we would want to hear that at the IGAD, you know, I know you are aware of IGAD, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which covers those countries where nomadic pastoralism is a problem. It has been a persistent problem. Sudan, South Sudan, northern Kenya, and eastern Uganda, and northeastern Uganda. We want to hear them taking the problem of nomadic pastoralism as a very key issue, because it involves the security of these states. Cattle rustling is not possible unless the proliferation of small arms is going on, because these people we have been having ugly incidents of people on the buses being arrested with ammunition that comes from inside Uganda. We are also aware that there must be along the porous borders of Uganda and South Sudan, along the porous borders of northeastern Uganda and Kenya, there are weapons coming in. So we want nomadic pastoralism to take its rightful place in the national political agenda, so that we resolve this. We have also had in the plea that as we discuss this issue, we properly recognize the efforts that have been put in. We are not swaying away the effort that have been put by the several people and groups that have been set in. But what we are telling the Speaker is that despite these efforts, we want to see a more comprehensive response. We want to see institutionalized responses, and we want to see responses that indicate to us and the local people that the government and other responsible institutions are taking this as a problem that has been perennial, a problem that has been historical, and the responses that are being made should be seen to be both short-term and also long-term. As civil society in Kitgum and Lamu, we continue to express our willingness and readiness to work with all the other actors, including the media, to make sure that we bring a lasting solution to the problem, which is not only on the side of, we should not be seen to be dealing with it from the Acholi section only. We should be seen to be also trying to reach out to the actors on the other side. That is why I was saying that we want to see a multi-ethnic forum on against cattle rustling in the parliament, which comprises of MPs from what I would call the offending districts, and then and the MPs from the victim districts. And that's why we are calling for. We want to hear MPs from areas where the rustlers are alleged to be coming from, making statements which are very clear and sympathizing with the victims of the actions and castigating the actions of the perpetrators. And that is our stand. We continue to remain willing and ready to act with the other actors so that we bring this to an end. I think these are briefly the remarks that I can make, and we can now tender in some questions or comments from you, the media houses. Thank you.
The relevance of the petition, as it was clearly stated in the petition letter, this is an historical problem. It has been around for quite some time, for decades, if you like, and the government has also been around, but nothing much in terms of reducing the rates and the cat rustling has happened. We are, like my colleague put it, we recognize some of the efforts that the government made in terms of disarmament in Karamojong, and also deployment of foot soldiers in the affected communities. But according to us, these efforts are probably too little, and therefore our appeal is that if more could be done, because regardless of the many actions that the government has taken recently, like we put it in the petition, a number of promises were made by the head of state and some officers, high-ranking officers, including General Mozi, to address this problem once and for all. But we are also in touch with the communities that we are speaking for in this petition. And in the last couple of days, there was an incident in Namokora, whereby some of these Karamojong raiders came and took a couple of animals. I don't have the figures in mind, but this is what our members, the CBOs that we have in these sub-counties, including Rom, Namokora, and Mia and Nima, report to us, because we're working closely with them to make sure that we accurately capture the situation on ground. And so, as civil society, the local civil society fraternity in Kitgum and Lamour, we have not in the past come together to put across our voice in the form of a petition like this, to add to the very many voices of the local politicians, actually leaders, APG, and the great power. So we felt that as civil society, we also need to add our voice, so that when we have all these voices concerted together, it may cause someone to think twice and do something significant to address this problem. So for me and for us, this is why our petition is unique, and we expect it to create some difference in terms of the response to this problem by the state. In terms of normalization, I do agree with the RDC. There has been some reduction in incidences of these attacks by the raiders, but this has been the situation over the years. You would have a peak period, and you would have a period where you have just isolated and sporadic raids by these rustlers. So this does not mean that the problem is going away. Yeah? Our concern is that this is a lingering problem. It keeps on peaking and calming down, peaking and calming down. And what we are calling for is a permanent solution to this problem. Because without security, people cannot develop. And people will be moving in and out of humanitarian crisis. Yeah? So we are looking at having a permanent solution that is orchestrated by the states to this problem here that we are facing of the raiders. How many CSOs are involved? I want to assure you that this is, like I said earlier, is not only a King 4 affair. It is a concerted effort by the CSOs. All the 18 signatures that we physically have on the petition letter here of the different CSOs, the active CSOs that we have in Kitgum and Lamour. If I could quickly mention the names. We have Rugby Tackling Live, we have Good Core Foundation, we have WAPO, we have Asset, we have Archbishop John Baptist Odama Care Center for Nodding Syndrome, we have Meeting Point, we have Center for CCVS, that is Center for Children in Vulnerable Situation. Yeah. So we have here international and local CSOs. We have Iron Gleason Foundation, we have Food for the Hungry, we have FACT for Uganda, we have ARIA, we have APSEDEC, and many others that have signed. And online we have also many other CSOs that have signed, and individuals, civil society activists, and people who feel passionately about this problem and would like to see it addressed. So I would like to reassure you that King for does not have any self-interest in seeing through this petition, but it is a representation of the different voices of the civil society actors from across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert, for the responses to the concerns raised by the media houses. I would just want to add a little to some of the responses that you have had. You ask, is this petition still relevant? I would want to say yes, very relevant, because as my colleague has said, sometime, many years, actually every year in the past, we have felt like we are feeling now that the raids have stopped, only for the problem to come back the next year. So you will see from our what we have proposed to the Speaker of Parliament are long term in one way. That we want, we know that every year the Ministry of Defense, for example, on behalf of the UPDF, would request Parliament for funding. We are asking Parliament to take in our plea that there is need to deploy more security forces to the areas which are raid prone along the common border of Karamojong and the regions that border it. So you are aware that the way government works, in that the executive may propose actions, but Parliament is the one that authorizes the release of the funds, and that is why we are directing our call for resources to support the deployment of more soldiers to the office of the Speaker, because we know the wishes of the executive cannot be fulfilled unless Parliament releases the resources necessary to support those. So this is long term. Next year or this year, when Ministry of Defense asks for more money, we want Parliament to know that part of the money goes to supporting troops which are being deployed along the Karamojong border. So our petition is still relevant. Our petition is still relevant because much as there are claims in other sections, and which claims are also partly true, that we agree the raids have gone down in frequency, but the effect on the local people have remained and continues to worsen, and that's why we are calling for assistance given to people who have. There are people who have not farmed from those areas there. So if the raids stopped, do the simsim suddenly germinate in their fields? Do they suddenly begin to see sorghum maturing in their fields? No, they don't have food. So the effect still persists in those areas, and that's why we are calling for the OPM to work together with the district and sub-county disaster management. You will see from our proposals to the Speaker of the House that as civil society, we really want to deal with institutions. This is something that I want you to pick out of our petitions. Throughout, we are calling on institutions because we want responses to problems in Uganda should be dealt with institutions as a government has mandated. When people come in individually, they are only supplementing the official efforts of institutions. That's why we are calling on the Office of the Prime Minister to work together. I don't know how many of you know whether there are disaster management committees at the sub-county level and at the district level, and they have because of the de-institutionalization of government in our country, these structures have literally been disbanded or rendered redundant, you know. So we want to reactivate them because they respond to the needs of the grassroots. The executive order, yes, the executive order led to the deployment. But these deployments we have observed over time. Much as the problem is perennial, it is always present over the long period of time. But the deployments are what do they call them in military way? They're just responses, you know, to incidents. What we are advocating for is for Parliament to work together with the relevant institutions to ensure that the presence, if it is necessary, the presence of the security forces in these areas is made as long as the problem still exists. So we will want to hear that there are barracks that have been established in some areas for the next 5 years. We want to see that there are efforts being made on the other side where the warriors come from, to ensure that their capacity, their affinity to cross over and rustle animals is reduced, because they have reduced their, you have reduced their ability to have access to ammunition. They have reduced their ability to have access to unlicensed guns. You have reduced their ability to think that rustling is still a viable livelihood, you know. So these things don't happen in Acholi. These things must happen at the other side where the warriors come from. We may not have included it in our petition, but one of the things that we look at as civil society is that in the long run, the warriors, the so-called warriors, the Karamojong warriors, and all the other cattle rustling, the Pokot, the Turkana, in the long run, they should be offered viable alternative livelihoods. Something that we say, when we leave cattle rustling, we shall survive on this. So as civil society, we are very concerned about the failure of livelihood programs designed to offer alternative livelihoods to the warriors, because that stutters, you know, stutters the viability of long-term solutions to cattle rustling. Because if we make the former warriors successful farmers, we make the former warriors successful sedentary pastoral, you know, I mean cattle keepers, you know. They are looking after fewer dairy animals, but they are sedentary. They are no longer nomadic. Those things work. So, but when we hear certain things happening, you know what has been happening in the media. All those point to failures of long-term programs of government designed to make warriors know that there are alternative livelihoods. So we think that our suggestions are mostly long-term, meant to address the root causes rather than the symptoms of the problem, as you see. Because what you see as cattle rustling is actually symptoms of the people who are dependent on nomadic pastoralism. That has rustling as an aspect. These statistics that we have taken really are statistics that have come almost 2 months ago. They may not, but they are not changeable, because although the number of although cattle rustling is reported to have increased, decreased in incidence, the number of herds that were banned could have only increased. So what we are presenting here as of end of June, yes, it is very important, because it indicates, for example, to the disaster management department of the OPM, the number of people that need support. We have reported in our petition here that people were traumatized. What do the responsible arms of government do to help to de-traumatize these people? These problems are still valid up to now, you know, because the trauma, you don't recover from your trauma because the perpetrators have been either put of action or the rest. The trauma remains. The US troops have been victorious in very many countries, but they remain traumatized, but they have won, you know, in terms of military and in terms of military strategy. So we are asking government to be strategic. We are reminding government that this is a perennial problem. So the response is not going to be erratic. It's not going to be momentary. It has to be the long haul. It has to be there. So this is what we think makes what we are saying still valid. Thank you.